looking out for local businesses, specifically when it comes to new legislation. That's the goal of a new collaboration between a Belvidere business and a statewide organization.
23 News reporter Anthony Ferretti talks with Growth Dimensions about how local politicians can now shape their laws to grow state-line businesses.
This is their voice, and we want to make sure that they have one here.
Pamela Lopez-Fedez with Growth Dimensions says oftentimes local lawmakers don't have time to visit every business to understand what their issues are.
There's a lot of legislation that affects our businesses and our community and their ability to sustain themselves or to grow. So we want to make sure that they're well positioned to do that.
That's why Growth Dimensions joined forces with the Illinois Manufacturers Association to create an initiative that brings the two parties together so local lawmakers can find out the issues impacting local businesses firsthand.
Or maybe there's legislation that should be established that hasn't been addressed yet, and maybe we want to propose something, and this is how we're starting that.
All too often the state is focused on the shiny new object or the new company coming in. You know, what can we do for those current companies?
One piece of legislation that will be discussed is the Biometric Information Privacy Act. Mark Densler with the Illinois Manufacturers Association says 2,000 companies were sued statewide for using devices that collect biometric information as a result of this act.
What we really try to do is build on the strengths that we have in Illinois, and then how can we champion policies that help make Illinois and the Rockford area even more attractive.
Working for you in Belvidere, Anthony Ferretti, 23 News.
Densler says legislation can make a difference. Because of lawmakers' efforts in Springfield, Belvidere's Stellantis plant will be revitalized.